Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this. Today, we're exploring the highly debated, maybe a little controversial, but undeniably fascinating money philosophy of Robert Kiyosaki, the guy behind Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We're looking at a completely different way to view wealth. And I'm going to tell you right now, to really grasp the concepts we're about to unpack, you might just have to unlearn almost everything you've ever been taught about personal finance. Here's our roadmap for today. We're covering the flawed school system, the illusion of saving, redefining assets, the three types of income, and finally, the how can I mindset. Starting off with section 1, the flawed school system and how it keeps you in the dark. Kiyosaki comes right out of the gate with a massive claim here. Seriously, take a second and think back. What did school actually teach you about money? Did anyone ever sit you down and explain cash flow, or leverage, or how taxes actually work? Yeah, for almost all of us, the answer is absolutely nothing. Zero. And Kiyosaki says this isn't just some innocent oversight. He argues that the traditional education system is fundamentally built to churn out lifelong worker bees. The whole idea is to educate you just enough so you can do your job and collect a paycheck, but never quite enough to understand the mechanics of the financial machine you're stuck operating within. It's wild when you think about the psychology behind this. Kiyosaki has this amazing quote: "Once you give someone a paycheck, their brain turns off." His mentor, who he calls his rich dad, actually forced him to work for free at first. Why would he do that? Well, because the exact moment you get handed a steady paycheck, you get comfortable. You start thinking like an employee. But when you work for free, your brain goes into overdrive. You literally have to figure out how to create value, to look for opportunities, and genuinely learn how money works instead of just blindly trading your time for it. Which brings us to section 2, the illusion of saving, and why the wealthy simply don't do it. So there is one piece of advice hammered into us since childhood. It's that saving your pennies is the ultimate path to wealth, right? Well, to understand why the rich completely reject that idea, we gotta look at a little history. Before 1971, the US dollar was actually tied to the gold standard. It represented something tangible. But then in 1971, President Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. In that exact moment, the rules of money changed forever. The US dollar effectively became debt. And ever since then, we've basically been in this era of continuous, nonstop money printing, where the supply of money can just be expanded with a push of a button. And that forces a pretty massive question. Why on earth would you save money when they can print it faster than you could ever work for it? This is Kiyosaki's entire argument against the traditional savings account. If the currency is constantly losing value because of endless printing, sitting on a pile of cash is just a losing game. Your purchasing power is quietly evaporating right out from under you, all while you think you're playing it safe. All right, let's move to section 3, redefining assets. We're talking nouns and verbs. If saving isn't the answer, what are we supposed to do? Well, the wealthy view their portfolios through a completely different, super strict lens. For most of us, an asset is just a noun, a thing you own, a car, a fancy watch, maybe a house. But Kiyosaki insists an asset absolutely has to be a noun plus a verb. To truly be an asset, it must be actively performing an action. Specifically, cash must be flowing into your pocket. If it's just sitting there, or worse, if it's costing you money to maintain it, that's not an asset at all. That is a liability. Let's apply this rule to the ultimate American dream, the family home. The middle class views the big house on the hill as their absolute greatest asset. But let's use the rule. Is money flowing in or is it flowing out? Well, with a mortgage, property taxes, and maintenance, money is definitely flowing out. It is draining your pocket. Now compare that to a rental property where a tenant pays you rent every single month. The noun is exactly the same, it's a house, but the verb completely changes. The rental is actively putting money into your pocket, and that makes it a true asset. Just to show you how this actually scales up, let's look at Kiyosaki's personal strategy. The guy owns over 7,000 rental properties. That is 7,000 assets that perfectly fit that noun plus verb definition, with cash flowing into his pocket every single month. By avoiding the temptation to tie up all his capital in some personal mega mansion where money just bleeds out, he totally avoids what he calls going broke. Let's dive into section 4, the 3 types of income and the reality of taxes, because the wealthy play by a completely different set of rules here. Before we break down the income types, we have to acknowledge a really uncomfortable truth. The number one expense for the vast majority of people is taxes. It's this massive invisible drain. You look at your paycheck, realize a huge chunk is just gone, and the government has their hand deep in your pocket before you even see a dime. The wealthy are hyper-aware of this, which is exactly why they do not rely on paychecks. When you really break it down, there are 3 distinct types of income.
First up is earned income. This is from a standard job, and yes, even if you're a high-paid doctor or a programmer, this category carries the absolute highest tax burden. Next, you have portfolio income. Think of capital gains from flipping stocks or real estate. This gets hit with medium taxes. But then you have passive income, cash flow from real estate. This carries practically zero taxes. Kiyosaki points out that billionaires like Jeff Bezos or even massive companies like McDonald's, which is actually a real estate empire secretly disguised as a burger joint, operate heavily in this tax-free passive column.
To put that into perspective for you, $300 million. That is the jaw-dropping amount of money Kiyosaki says the banks handed him right after the 2008 financial crash. And the craziest part of that whole story, it was entirely tax-free. How is that even possible? Because he didn't earn it as a salary. He used debt. See, while the middle class is taught to be terrified of debt, the rich actually use debt as money. The government literally rewards you for borrowing, as long as you use it to provide housing or jobs for the economy, which ends up yielding massive tax breaks. Now, huge warning label here, this strategy absolutely requires a high level of financial education. We are not talking about maxing out your credit cards on a flat-screen TV. It's about safely and strategically leveraging debt to acquire cash-flowing assets. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the how can I mindset and changing your internal dialogue. This right here is the psychological core of this entire explainer. Because look, you can memorize all the tax codes and real estate definitions in the world, but if your internal dialogue is broken, you are not going to get anywhere. It all comes down to contrasting two simple phrases. The poor mindset says, I can't afford it. The exact second you say that, boom, your brain shuts off, you completely let yourself off the hook. But the rich mindset asks, how can I afford it? Notice that it's a question. It forces your brain to wake up, to actively search for solutions, and to look at an obstacle as an investment opportunity. One is just an inherited attitude of poverty, while the other is the ultimate breeding ground for financial ingenuity. So Kiyosaki gives us 3 highly actionable steps to flip this script. Step 1, literally stop saying the word can't. Just erase it from your financial vocabulary. Step 2, face rejection head on. When Kiyosaki was trying to scale, banks rejected him over and over again. But instead of giving up, he asked those bankers for feedback, fixed his numbers, and went right back. And step 3, increase your intelligence through your mistakes. Don't be paralyzed by the fear of failing. Every single mistake is just data telling you how to do it better the next time around. So we're going to wrap up this explainer with a pretty powerful question for you. Are you going to stay trapped in the same system, playing by those old, outdated rules? Or are you going to change the dialogue in your head today? It all starts with unlearning what you thought you knew. Keep asking, how can I? Keep pushing your boundaries, and I'll see you in the next explainer.